The first time I saw her, the world around her seemed to hush. It was a hot Thursday afternoon in Enugu, and I had come with a few volunteers to drop off supplies at St. Bridget's Orphanage, a humble structure tucked away behind a row of overgrown mango trees and rusting zinc fences. The building itself wasn't much to look at. Faded blue paint clinging to cracked walls, a sagging roof that had seen better days, and a playground with 2 broken swings swaying aimlessly in the wind. But in the center of it all stood Amara. She was tall, graceful, and striking in a way that defied definition. Not the sort of beauty that comes from symmetry or glamour, but something deeper. Her eyes, a shade between brown and gold, seemed to look through things rather than at them. The children clustered around her as if pulled by invisible strings, their laughter carrying a strange serenity, like a hymn sung off-key yet still holy. She looked up as I approached, smiled faintly, and said, "You came." I didn't recall telling her I was coming that day, but I nodded anyway, caught off guard by the familiarity of her tone. She extended her hand. "You're the one who donated the generator last month. I wanted to thank you personally." Her handshake lingered, warm, deliberate, confident, the kind that left an imprint long after your fingers part. "It was nothing," I murmured, "just doing what I can." Amara's smile deepened. "Nothing is ever nothing when it's done with a pure heart. The spirits told me you'd come. They said your heart is restless, always seeking a place to give." The sentence was strange, unnerving even, but the way she said it made it sound like truth. That was my first mistake, letting her voice settle in my chest like a lullaby. The weeks that followed were a blur of visits. What began as a charitable commitment turned into an emotional tether I couldn't explain. Every time I drove up the narrow dirt road that led to the orphanage, I felt a sense of calm and curiosity, a pull, as though some invisible thread was drawing me back. Amara always greeted me with the same unhurried grace, her white headscarf perfectly tied, her bare feet silent on the old cement floors. She moved like someone who belonged both to this world and to another. The children adored her. When she spoke, they listened. When she prayed, they knelt in perfect stillness. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low behind the palm trees, I asked her how she managed to keep the children so disciplined. She looked at me for a long moment before replying. "I listen to them, even the ones who aren't here anymore." "The ones who aren't here?" I echoed, unsure if I'd heard correctly. Her gaze softened. "There are spirits of children who never had the chance to grow, to laugh, to live. They stay here, near those who still breathe. I hear them. They tell me what the living ones need." I should have laughed it off, but I didn't. There was something in her tone, absolute conviction, without a hint of madness. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't get her words out of my head. I listened to them. By the 3rd week, I found myself volunteering more time. I helped repair a leaking roof, donated new mattresses, and funded a repainting project. But what I truly wanted was to understand her. There was something magnetic about Amara, something between faith and danger. The more she spoke about her connection to the unseen, the more I felt drawn in. She told stories that blurred the line between spiritual and tangible realities, of dreams that foretold accidents, of laughter heard at midnight, of shadows that walked the orphanage halls. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, I stayed behind to help her pack donated clothes. The power had gone out, and we worked by candlelight, the air thick with the scent of wax and dust. "You give too much," she said suddenly. I looked up, surprised. "I don't think I do enough." She smiled without looking at me. "You do more than most. The spirits notice. They bless givers like you, those who act not for praise, but for purpose." Her voice dropped lower. "But blessings must be protected." Before I could ask what she meant, the wind rushed through the broken window, blowing out half the candles. For a second, the room plunged into darkness. Then I saw her face illuminated by a single flickering flame. Her eyes were distant, fixed on something over my shoulder. "They're here," she whispered. "The lost ones." A chill ran through me. I turned, expecting to see one of the children awake. Nothing, just the faint rustle of curtains. When I looked back, Amara was smiling again, calm as ever. "Don't be afraid. They don't harm those who mean well." I forced a laugh, though my heart pounded. "You make it sound like a horror story." She tilted her head, eyes glinting. "Only those with guilt have reason to fear ghosts." The words stayed with me long after I left that night. The first sign that something wasn't right came a week later. One of the children, a quiet boy named Keen, refused to sleep in his bunk. He sat outside under the moonlight, whispering to himself. When I asked what was wrong, he pointed toward the dark hallway of the dormitory and said, "Auntie Amara said the spirits don't like when we hide from them." "Spirits?" I asked, trying to sound gentle. He nodded. "They walk at night. They talk to her in her room. Sometimes they call our names." I smiled uneasily. "They're probably dreams, Keen. You know, the kind that feels real." He looked at me, dead serious. "Dreams don't leave wet footprints." My blood turned cold. I didn't press further. Later, I told Amara what he'd said, half jokingly, hoping for reassurance. Instead, she gave a soft laugh. "Oh, he's sensitive. Some children are closer to the other side than others." "The other side?" She leaned forward slightly, the candlelight flickering between us. "Life and death are not opposites, my dear. They are simply two rooms in the same house. I keep the door open, that's all." The calm with which she said it unnerved me. I changed the subject, but the words echoed in my mind all the way home. By the 5th week, my visits had turned into something more than duty. There was an intimacy forming, one that hovered dangerously between admiration and desire. I couldn't tell if she noticed, but she seemed to speak directly to my soul each time we talked. One rainy evening, she invited me into her quarters behind the orphanage. A small room filled with old books, framed photographs of children, and rows of candles melted into rivers of wax. The smell of sandalwood hung thick in the air. "You work too hard," she said softly. "You give too much of yourself to the world. Yet who gives to you?" I hesitated. "I'm fine. I just want to help where I can." She shook her head slowly. "No one gives without wanting something in return, even if that something is meaning." Her eyes held mine for a moment too long. I felt warmth creep up my neck. Then she stood, moving toward a small wooden box on her shelf. From it, she took a tiny string of white beads and pressed them into my palm. "For protection," she murmured. "Wear it when you come here. It will help the children trust you more, and keep the others at bay." "The others?" Her voice dropped. "Not all spirits are kind." Something in the air changed then. The rain outside grew heavier, pounding the roof like angry fists. The candle flames stretched higher, though there was no wind. I looked down at the beads in my hand. They were strangely warm, almost pulsing. When I looked up again, Amara was watching me closely. There was a softness to her gaze, but beneath it, something darker. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "They know you now. They've accepted you." I wanted to ask who they were, but the words caught in my throat. Her presence filled the room like smoke, intoxicating and suffocating at once. A flash of lightning illuminated her face, serene, almost angelic. But in that instant, I saw something move behind her. A small shadow, a child's silhouette. Then it was gone. I blinked hard. "Did you see that?" She smiled faintly. "They like you." I left soon after, pretending not to be shaken. But as I drove home through the storm, I couldn't shake the image from my mind. The way the shadow had lingered, the way Amara had smiled. That night, I dreamed of children standing at the foot of my bed, their eyes dark and watchful. And in the center of them stood Amara, whispering something I couldn't hear. When I woke, the beads she had given me lay on the pillow beside me, though I was sure I had left them in my car. And in the stillness before dawn, I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of children laughing outside my window. I tried to stay away. After the dream, I told myself I needed distance, that the orphanage had begun to seep into my mind in ways I didn't understand. But 3 days later, I found myself driving back to Enugu, heart pounding with a strange mixture of fear and longing. When I arrived, the gate was open, as if she'd been expecting me. The courtyard was quiet except for the rustle of trees and the faint laughter of children echoing from the far side of the compound. Amara stood by the doorway, a white shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her eyes calm and knowing. "You came," she said, the same way she'd greeted me that first day. I swallowed hard. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop thinking. "Thinking isn't always an act of will," she interrupted gently. "Sometimes the spirit calls, and we obey." She led me inside without another word. The scent of incense was stronger than ever, heavy with something floral yet metallic underneath. Her quarters had changed. More candles, more symbols drawn on the walls in chalk. Spirals, crosses, and something that looked like a child's handprint. "You've been doing rituals?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her lips curved into a half-smile. "Prayers. For protection. For you. For me." She nodded, walking closer. "Since the night you accepted the beads, the children's spirits have taken a liking to you. They whisper your name sometimes. I think they want to keep you close." I should have been unnerved. Instead, I felt flattered. Her words wrapped around me like silk. She gestured for me to sit, poured me a cup of palm wine, and spoke softly about the children. Their dreams, their fears, their unseen companions. Each story blurred the line between compassion and mysticism. And as she spoke, her hand brushed mine again, just briefly, yet enough to send a spark through my chest. "You give them hope," she said, "and that makes the spirits restless. Hope attracts energy, and energy must be managed. Balanced." "How do you balance it?" Her eyes darkened. "By giving back. Through devotion. Through connection." The air seemed to tighten between us. I didn't understand her meaning, but I didn't ask. Part of me didn't want to. That evening, she invited me to join a special night of blessings for the orphanage. When I arrived, the children were already gathered in the courtyard, sitting cross-legged around a ring of candles. The sky was bruised with thunderclouds, and the air hummed with anticipation. Amara stood in the center, her white gown glowing faintly in the flickering light. She looked like something between a saint and a sorceress. "Tonight," she said, her voice echoing, "we thank the ones who watch over us, the unseen hands that feed, heal, and guide, and we honor those who help us remain pure in our purpose." Her gaze lingered on me for a fraction too long. The ritual began with songs, soft, haunting melodies that rose and fell like waves. The children chanted words I didn't recognize, their small voices threading through the night air. Amara moved among them, sprinkling water, whispering prayers. And then she beckoned me forward. "Come," she said, her hand extended. "Join the circle." I hesitated but stepped inside. The moment I did, the temperature dropped sharply. The candles flickered wildly, their flames stretching toward the sky as if reaching for something unseen. "Close your eyes," she whispered. I obeyed. Her fingers brushed my temples, cool and steady. She murmured words in a language I didn't know, something melodic, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. I felt dizzy, the world tilting slightly beneath my feet. Then her voice grew softer, closer to my ear. "Do you feel them?" "I don't know." "They're around you," she breathed. "They're touching your soul. They want to know if your heart is willing." Her lips were near my cheek now. The scent of her skin was intoxicating, spice and smoke and something sweeter beneath. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "What does that mean?" I managed. "It means," she murmured, "they accept you, but they require communion. They must be fed with devotion, energy, warmth." Her hand slid from my temple to my chest, resting there lightly. "You have such a strong heart. That's why they chose you." For a moment, the air shimmered. I could swear I heard faint laughter, children's laughter, though none of the kids moved or spoke. Then Amara drew back, and the world returned to stillness. When the ritual ended, she dismissed the children and turned to me. "Stay a while," she said. "You look pale." I followed her back to her quarters, my legs unsteady. Inside, the candles burned low, their light throwing slow-moving shadows across the walls. Amara poured more wine and sat opposite me, watching. There was a strange intimacy in her gaze. Something unspoken, heavy. "Are you frightened?" she asked. I hesitated. "No, just overwhelmed." "That's good," she said softly. "Fear shows that your spirit is awake. It means they've touched you." She leaned closer, her hand brushing my face, her thumb tracing the edge of my jaw. "You're part of us now, part of me." Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "But to stay connected, you mustn't resist. You must give what the spirits demand." Her touch lingered, her breath warm against my neck. My thoughts tangled between devotion and desire, between worship and weakness. When she kissed me, it felt like a prayer, gentle at first, then consuming. I should have stopped it, but I didn't. That night, her room felt like a temple. The air pulsed with unseen presence. Every candle seemed to lean toward us as if watching. And though I tried to tell myself it was only human passion, something deeper stirred in that moment. Something neither of us controlled. When it was over, she lay beside me, tracing patterns on my skin with her fingertip. "Now," she whispered, "they are pleased. You'll sleep peacefully." I didn't. The following days passed in a blur. I told myself what happened had been a lapse of judgment, a one-time thing. But she continued to call me back, to help with blessings, to renew the bond. Each visit left me weaker, emptier, yet more entangled. Her influence extended beyond the physical. My dreams grew stranger, filled with flickering candlelight and soft, echoing giggles. Sometimes I woke to find the white beads glowing faintly on my wrist, pulsing with warmth. Then the children began behaving oddly. They whispered among themselves when Amara wasn't around. I caught them staring at me during mealtimes, their eyes wide and glassy, like they knew something I didn't. One evening, a little girl named Igioma tugged my sleeve and whispered, "She says you belong to them now." "Who says that?" I asked, heart thudding. She pointed toward the window, where the curtains fluttered in the wind. "The ones that stand there when it rains." I turned quickly, nothing. But the air was cold, damp, almost electric. When I looked back, Igioma was gone. That night, I confronted Amara. She listened quietly, her face unreadable as I spoke of the children's strange words, the dreams, the feelings I couldn't shake. When I finished, she smiled, softly, pityingly. "You still don't understand," she said. "You think what we share is ordinary, but it's not. Every act between us feeds the veil. Every offering strengthens the protection. Without it, the children would suffer. They would die." I stared at her, struggling to breathe. "Are you saying what we did was for them?" Her eyes gleamed. "Everything is for them. The spirits require balance. My body is the bridge. You," she stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper, "you are the offering." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "That's insane, Amara." "Is it?" she asked, her tone almost tender. "You've seen the signs. You've felt them. Don't pretend you haven't. Every time you leave, they follow you. They whisper your name. They know you now." I wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat. Because deep down, I had felt something. Something that lingered after every visit, every touch, every kiss. I left the orphanage that night, driving fast through the rain, my chest tight with confusion and shame. But when I reached my apartment, the lights flickered as I opened the door. The air smelled faintly of incense, and on my bed lay a single white bead, glowing softly in the dark. Sleep refused to come. When I finally drifted off, I found myself standing once again in the orphanage courtyard. The candles burned in perfect circles, and in their center stood Amara, her face half-lit, half-shadowed. Around her, the children stood silently, their heads tilted upward, eyes blank. She looked at me and smiled. "You see now," she said. "You're part of them. You always were." I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The room was cold, unnaturally so. From the corner of the room came the faint sound of laughter, high-pitched, playful, and wrong. I turned toward the sound. Nothing, just darkness. But when I looked at the window, I saw it. A small handprint on the glass, pressed from the inside. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't escaped at all. She finished her sentence slowly, eyes half closed, voice trembling like something ancient was speaking through her. Every act feeds the veil. Every touch, every breath, every offering. It opens a door for them, keeps the spirits alive. Her words lingered in the air like the smoke of her incense. I stood there, heart pounding, unsure whether to be angry or afraid. You're saying what we did, what you did, wasn't just between us? Her smile was faint, almost tender. Between us? Oh, my dear, it was never just between us. She rose from her chair and began to pace slowly around me, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. When you give yourself to me, you give to them. They draw from your devotion, from your fire. That's how we keep the orphanage safe. That's how the children sleep at night without the shadows taking them away. I felt cold all over. Amara, that's not faith. That's love, she interrupted sharply. You think love ends where flesh begins? No, love is the oldest form of worship. That's what they taught me when I was called. I stared at her. Who taught you? She stopped. The candlelight flickered across her face, revealing something hard behind her beauty. The children who died before this place was born. The ones nobody buried right. They found me when I was 16, an orphan myself. I heard their voices in the forest, crying. They showed me how to make a home for the lost. But to keep the veil open, to let them protect the living. Her voice trailed off. I didn't ask her to finish. Instead, I turned toward the door. I needed air. I needed distance. But when I reached for the handle, I heard it again. That soft, unmistakable laughter of children, echoing through the hallways. Except this time, there were no children awake. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed in one of the guest rooms, pacing, listening. The wind outside moaned through the mango trees, and occasionally, I thought I heard tiny footsteps just outside my door. At around midnight, I heard whispering. It was faint, like 2 or 3 voices murmuring from behind the wall. I pressed my ear to it. The voices were childish, sing-song. Why does he fight? One said. Because he doesn't know, another replied. He belongs now, the first whispered. She gave him. My breath froze. I stepped back from the wall, pulse racing. Then I did what every foolish man in a ghost story does. I opened the door. The hallway was dark, the candles long dead. I could barely make out the shape of the old portraits on the walls. At the far end, the door to Amara's quarters stood slightly ajar, light flickering from within. Against all reason, I went closer. Her voice drifted out, soft, chanting, the same melodic language she used during the rituals. The scent of incense was thick again, almost choking. Through the narrow crack, I saw her kneeling before a bowl of water, surrounded by candles and children's toys. Tiny shoes, ribbons, a broken doll. And in the reflection of the water, I saw faces. Not clearly, but enough to know they weren't living. Pale eyes, open mouths, blurred shapes moving behind her reflection. Amara whispered something, then paused as if listening to a reply. Not yet, she said softly. He must still believe. I stumbled back, my hand over my mouth, my mind screaming for sense. I left before dawn. I didn't say goodbye. For weeks, I tried to forget her. I buried myself in work, in other projects, in anything that wasn't that orphanage. But she haunted my thoughts. Her voice, her touch, her stories of the spirits. Sometimes, I'd wake up with the faint smell of her incense still clinging to my clothes. Then one morning, I received a letter. The envelope bore no return address, only a faint scent of jasmine. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The letter trembled in my hands as I reread it by the dim light of my study lamp. The children miss you. The veil grows thin. Come back before the whispers turn against you. I had burned the first letter weeks ago, but this one I couldn't bring myself to destroy. Something in the handwriting delicate, elegant, unmistakably hers. seemed to pulse with a faint life of its own. For 3 nights, I kept it in a drawer beside my bed, telling myself it was just paper, that whatever Amara had done, whatever spell she had tried to cast, had died with her in that orphanage. But that illusion didn't last. The first nightmare came on the 4th night. I was back at the orphanage, walking through the halls. The walls were no longer wood and paint. They were flesh, veined and pulsing, the laughter of children echoing like whispers through bone. I could feel the floor breathing beneath my feet. And at the end of the hallway stood Amara, her white gown soaked through with something dark, her eyes hollow yet glowing. She raised a hand and said softly, "You shouldn't have left them." I woke with a scream, my sheets drenched in sweat. My room smelled of incense. A few days later, I began getting messages from the new caretaker of the orphanage project I'd helped fund before the fire. She said the surviving children, those who'd been relocated, had started waking up screaming at night. "They keep saying her name," the woman said over the phone. "Amara. They say she comes to them in dreams, that she stands by their beds and tells them to be good. Some of them even draw her. The likeness is disturbing." I froze. She sent me one of the drawings. A child's hand had sketched Amara's face, sharp cheekbones, wide eyes, but behind her, faintly drawn in charcoal, were rows of smaller faces, children peering from behind her shoulders like shadows. That night I dreamed again. Only this time I wasn't at the orphanage. I was in my own home. The candles on my shelf burned without being lit, and in their light I saw the small white bead, the one I had found in the ruins, rolling slowly across the floor toward me. Then I heard her voice. "Love is eternal," she whispered. "The veil is open, my dear. You gave yourself willingly." I woke up gasping, the bead sitting on my chest. I threw it out the window, but the next morning it was back on my pillow, warm to the touch. In the following weeks, my life began to unravel. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. At work, I would drift off into trances, hearing faint laughter echoing from empty rooms. The reflection in my office glass would sometimes flicker. Not mine, but hers, standing behind me, eyes soft, mouth moving though I couldn't hear the words. And then came the visits. It started with the smell, the same incense from her room. Sweet, metallic, thick, it would fill the air, even when I was miles from Enugu. Then the lights would flicker, and I'd hear soft knocks at the door. 3 taps, then silence. Once I opened the door. There was no one there, but on the doormat lay a child's shoe. Small, dirty, still wet from invisible rain. I didn't go back inside. I spent the night sitting in my car, shaking, staring at the darkened windows of my house. I knew then that she wasn't haunting the orphanage anymore. She was haunting me. Desperation drove me to a priest, an old man who had lived in the outskirts of Nsukka for decades. I told him everything, even the parts one was ashamed of. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "You didn't just lie with a woman," he said finally. "You entered a covenant." "What kind of covenant?" He leaned forward, eyes grave. "Amara was what we call a medium of devotion. She used intimacy to bind the living to the dead, to feed the spirits she served. When you gave yourself to her, she didn't just take your body. She marked your spirit." My stomach twisted. "Can I break it?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "You can only distance yourself through cleansing. But even then, the bond will remain faint, like a scar. The dead don't forget easily." He handed me a small bottle of anointing oil and told me to pour it at every corner of my house for 7 nights straight while reciting Psalm 91. I did everything exactly as he said. But on the 6th night, as I began to pray, the lights went out. And from the darkness, her voice came again. "Do you really think you can wash me away?" The shadows seemed to shift. I felt her breath on my neck, her whisper curling around my ear. "You promised to protect them. You belong to the children now." I turned, shouting her name, but there was no one there, only the faint sound of laughter fading down the hall. It's been 3 months now. The nightmares have lessened, but they haven't stopped. Sometimes, I still hear footsteps in the hall at night, or see small fingerprints on my windows that no child could have reached. I moved houses, even cities, but it doesn't matter. She finds me wherever I go. The children she once cared for, those I helped, still have dreams of her. Their caretakers say she visits them at night, placing her hand on their heads, whispering blessings. But there's something wrong with those blessings. One of the boys stopped speaking entirely. Another began drawing symbols on the walls, spirals and eyes, just like the ones I'd seen in her quarters. When they asked him what they meant, he said, "They're doors. Mama Amara says they're doors." I've tried to tell myself it's coincidence, that the human mind, once touched by something dark, begins to conjure its own monsters. But deep down, I know better, because sometimes, when I wake in the middle of the night, I feel it, the weight of a small hand on my chest, and a woman's voice, faint and familiar, whispering, "They still need you." When I open my eyes, the bead lies beside me, glowing faintly in the dark, and through the stillness of the night, I hear her laugh, soft, loving, endless. Now I understand what she meant when she said love is the oldest form of worship. She wasn't lying. She just never told me who we were really worshiping.